Good morning. Welcome to this morning's breakout session number 1. This is the Track 3 Climate Change Impacts. I'm Drew Thornley. I'm an energy policy analyst in Austin, Texas, and I'm delighted to be your moderator this morning. We have with us this morning Professor Laurence Gould, Professor Howard Hayden, and Professor Mitch Taylor, who has graciously stepped in for Keith Lockett. So thank you for stepping in on such short notice. Laurence Gould is a professor of physics at the University of Hartford. He has taught physics, math, and interdisciplinary courses, including astronomy, linear algebra, musical acoustics, and reasoning and science. His works have appeared in such periodicals as the International Journal of Theoretical Physics, the American Journal of Physics, and the Journal of College Science Teaching. For the past 4 years, he has been engaged in a critical analysis of the scientific and methodological aspects of global warming and climate change. Please join me in welcoming Professor Gould.
Thanks very much. I have 20 minutes, so I'll try to go at a reasonable pace. Okay, what I want to talk about is, as you can see on the screen, I want to check the claims, some of the claims of global warming alarmists. Whoops. And I'd like to expose some of the methods. My website is there, has more information. There's loads of topics over here, the sun, carbon dioxide models. I would normally show disasters videos, but I think there are enough of those, so we'll skip that. Some of the claims about CO2 causing dangerous global warming, change in the ice caps, floods, sea level rise, heat wave in 2003, forest fires, melting of snows, Kilimanjaro, hurricanes, tornadoes, sign Kyoto, just do it, don't think about it, just do it. It's been in the press. Here you see the earth in a frying pan. Here you see the earth on fire. And here you see fire on the earth. Possible economic consequences of agua-stimulated policies. I use the acronym AGWA, Anthropogenic Global Warming Alarmism, or alarmist. It's easier to talk about. There is a use of coal in the United States. It's very inexpensive. Whoops, what happened here? Let's see me go back. Can I go back? Yeah. And as compared to other sources, it's pretty inexpensive. The gray areas over here are the amounts of gee, what's happening? Let's see. I'll try this one. The U.S. energy use is, in 2006, is about 85% from hydrocarbons. Nevertheless, although we use that and depend on it, Al Gore and others want to impose cap and trade. That has certain costs associated with it. In 2008, whoops, here we go again. In 2008, it's about $1,100 a year, so that'll be till 2015. It'll be about $7,000 that it will cost the average American household. So basically, it's a permanent tax increase. 2015, it'll go to about $1,400. 2030, it'll go about to $2,000 a year, and about $3,000 in 2050. For energy prices, electricity will increase 5 to 15% under cap and trade to 2015. Natural gas, 15 to 50%. Gasoline, the cost will go from anywhere from 16 cents to $2.58. This was a Clemson University study. Oh, thank you. How's that? Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Some brief comments about popular perceptions. I think it's true that alternate energy sources would decrease our reliance on oil, so I'm in favor of alternate energy sources. I also agree that pollution is damaging to the environment. It depends, though, what you mean by pollution. You don't want to shut down all the emissions. You'll shut down the entire economy. Claim that anthropogenic emission of CO2 is causing dangerous global warming is not supported, regardless of the widespread claims. And the existence of a range of climate change disasters, the claim that supports the agua belief is not true. It supports the belief, but doesn't support the evidence. Global mean surface temperature. This is kind of interesting because what you see is various lines. The one in orange is not increasing as rapidly, and the one in yellow over on the right, up to around 2000, is increasing most rapidly. And this was used by the IPCC, and it's in the Physics Today issue, December 2007. R.K. Pachauri, chairman of the IPCC, said, "So I'd like to emphasize the fact we're at a stage where warming is taking place at a much faster rate, and clearly if we don't bring about some changes, we would have much faster changes in the future." Okay, that's the chair of the IPCC. And that fast rate is given by yellow. It depends, though, on where you pick your points. So, for example, the yellow has a starting point and an end point. So does the red line. I've drawn in a green line. If you lived in 1940, what you would see is that first green line pointing up toward the top, and it's faster than the slope looks larger than the other lines, and you can see a slope larger than the yellow line. So it looks like we're in for some serious global warming if you lived in 1940. If you lived in 1950, it looks like you're in for some serious global cooling. So depending on where you pick your points, you can get serious global warming or serious global cooling. And the IPCC decides to pick their points, and I decide to pick my points. And to paraphrase from a song in Annie Get Your Gun, I can pick any points better than you can. I can. What's the evidence? Well, the top graph shows that the temperature keeps rising, but if you look at the bottom one, then you'll notice that there's absolutely no trend, and we're talking, the bottom one focuses in on the years around 1997 to near where we are now. If this looks familiar to you, it's Dick Lindzen's. We're actually decreasing in temperatures. Increasing in temperatures is good. In the Holocene period, we happen to live in the Holocene. In between the glacials, there are periods around 10,000 years or so. And when it's warm, most of the time, about 90% of the time, we've got something like a mile of ice over our heads. We lucked out, and in the medieval warm period, which is over near the right, the Vikings settled Greenland, and it's been pointed out a number of times, Greenland has its name for good reason. Warm is good. The sun is a player. When activity is low, you can do things like have frost fairs on the Thames River in England. This was in 1684. Carbon dioxide. Al Gore says the most important of so-called greenhouse gases is carbon dioxide. Looks like this didn't come out. Some people think that carbon dioxide kills. How much carbon dioxide are we working with over here? Well, if you do the analogy, if you consider a 100,000 person football stadium, and if each person stands for 1 molecule of the atmosphere, then how many people stand for all the CO2 molecules? The answer is about 40. That's total. How many people stand for the human contribution? 1 out of 100,000. So I guess CO2 can have a big effect if you had something like a Superman CO2 molecule. In terms of the human output, it's given by that green square, about 6 units, 6 billion tons. Nature is about 30 times more. So if people tell you, put out the fire, pull out your light bulb, see where the big splash is, you can just point to the right-hand panel. That's nature's contribution. So relatively speaking, carbon dioxide is vital for plant life, for agriculture, and therefore it's vital for human life, okay? To destroy carbon dioxide is also to attempt to destroy human beings. The amount of carbon dioxide, if you increase it, tends to enhance plant growth. That's the blue rectangles. Atmospheric carbon dioxide is not pollution. I know that some people think it's pollution. It is not pollution. As one of the court judges said, if you have arbitrary definitions of pollution, then frisbees and flatulence would qualify. Does carbon dioxide push temperature? Well, as you can see here, the carbon dioxide keeps increasing. It's from 1998, it's actually over the 20th century, whereas near where we are now, temperature is decreasing. This is particularly annoying. When I first heard about it, I didn't believe it, so I went out and bought the book. This is The Down-to-Earth Guide to Global Warming, and this is spreading false ideas to children. If you look at the red curve, what you find is if you're going from right to left, it's 650,000 years ago to the present, you'll notice that the peaks in the red are to the right of the peaks in the blue, and the peaks in the red are supposed to be the peaks in carbon dioxide, so that according to Al Gore, carbon dioxide pushes temperature higher, okay? And that's just what the curve in the children's book shows. The labels have been reversed, so the curves give you a deliberately misleading picture. In fact, the red is temperature, and temperature goes first, then CO2 next, probably because the oceans, which occupy 2/3 of the Earth's surface, can be large repositories of CO2. When the temperature goes up, the CO2 comes out. Models, James Hansen, who probably a lot of people know of, made predictions back in 1988. The curve in A is the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is actually the situation that developed. What were the observations? Which is closest? Well, the observations are the red line D, and you can see there's quite a disconnect between the worst case scenario, that is what happened, and what Hansen's predictions are. He's off. Feynman says it doesn't make any difference how beautiful your guess is. It doesn't make any difference how smart you are, who made the guess, or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment or the evidence, it's wrong. The medieval warm period has occurred all over the Earth, yet it has been managed to be modeled out, so to speak, by Man and Company. Al Gore says that he's being attacked unjustly, whereas, in fact, if you look at McIntyre and McKittrick or the Wegman Report or Moncton or Marlowe Lewis' critique of the film or the book, or McKittrick, what's the hockey stick debate about? In particular, you can see all of the manipulations, or some of the manipulations anyway, that went on in the Mann Report. I don't know why this is not working. The video isn't working for some reason. But let's go on. In climate research and modeling, we should recognize that we are dealing with a coupled nonlinear chaotic system, and therefore that long-time prediction of future climate states is not possible. I didn't say that. The IPCC said that. They said in 2001, you won't find it easily, though. You have to go to page 774. That's where it's buried, so to speak. I haven't seen it in the summary for policymakers. A friend of mine says they put it in there at all because they're covering their assets. Are the polar bears threatened? Well, I guess Mitch Taylor will tell you that maybe we shouldn't be so worried, even though there are people who are. There's over a factor of 2 increase in the polar bear populations from around 50 years ago. There are tornadoes and so on, all these climate disasters that are projected. But the fact of something melting doesn't tell you what the cause is, and that is utterly critical to this issue. If you cut causality out of science, you cut the fundamental methodology, the heart, out of the scientific method. And that is what the aguas have been engaged in doing. Sea level rise is only a couple of millimeters a year. 2 millimeters is the thickness of a paper clip. Methodological errors. If it rained, then the streets are wet. That's reasonable, okay? If the streets are wet, therefore it rained, that's not reasonable. The fire hydrants could have broken, the street sweepers could have come along. Let's apply this to climate change. It's an error in logic. It's called the fallacy of affirming the consequent. It is utterly rampant. If there's anthropogenic global warming, if that's true, then the Arctic ice will melt. The Arctic ice is melting. Therefore, there's anthropogenic global warming. It's the same error in logic, though. There's loads of things that are supposed to be caused by global warming. The Antarctic ice grows. The Antarctic ice shrinks 5 minutes. So the thing that I think is becoming extinct is logic. The latest thing that's supposedly caused by global warming is a recent plane crash in the Hudson River due to birds, migratory patterns affected. Consensus in science, Einstein and consensus, someone said to him, look, Einstein, 200 people are against your theory, what do you have to say? I think this was during the Nazi era. One valid refutation is sufficient. The number of scientists is not important. The only thing that's important is if the scientists are correct. And that person who said this stressed it. That's the important part. He did some work on it. This is Iva Javer, the Nobel laureate in physics, and it was a recent 2008 meeting. Pictorially, in terms of consensus, the lemmings, most of them, are, according to myth, going to their death in the sea. They're the consensus. The lemming with the inner tube on him is not the consensus. Prevailing authorities is used also as an argument. Al Pachori and Gore got the Nobel Prize, and what Javer says is, I hate to say something bad about Norway, he comes from Norway, but in this case I sharply, his stress, disagree with that prize. Again, that's Iva Javer. Precautionary principle, you can use seat belts or you can use tanks. It's a cost-benefit issue. It's a little difficult to get into Stop and Shop with tanks, so maybe seat belts are the way to go. DDT is an example of disaster that has been caused by mass hysteria using improperly the precautionary principle. Before the DDT ban, there were about 50,000 deaths per year. After the DDT, over 1 million. There's ad hominem attacks. This is from Le Figaro, climate disasters. No intelligent person can any longer fail to associate these disaster events with fossil fuel burning, which means that if you doubt what you're being told, you're stupid. There are all sorts of other attacks to deflect attention from the science, including he's paid or she's paid by the fossil fuel industry, et cetera. Consequences for science. Dangers to science. Science is going to get a black eye because of the agua misrepresentations. What's going to happen to the public support of science when they find out what's been going on? 2 minutes, thank you. What will happen to the funding of legitimate science? What is happening to it? What is happening to the funding of climate science at the expense of other science? There are about $10 billion per year put into climate science research now. What message is conveyed to students who would have gone into science had they not found out what's going on? And what's going to happen to science education in the United States? If you had all the Kyoto signatories cutting out their emissions, you would drop the temperature by 0.07 degrees in 50 years or so. Nevertheless, the EPA is expected to regulate carbon dioxide, according to New York Times, February 18th. And as it says there, this decision will most likely play out in stages and would have a profound impact on transportation, manufacturing costs, how utilities generated power. In fact, your life, everything you buy, is tied to energy. 1 minute, thanks. Moral issues. Unless we announce disaster, no one will listen. This is to John Houghton, who is Chair for Scientific Assessment. We need very large growth in renewable energy sources, biomass. That was put into effect. We have biofuels. You go to the gasoline station, you see places where it says 10% of what's in your tank is going to be ethanol. That's created the biofuels disaster, where you had a cutback on land for food and increase of land for biofuels, and there have been food riots as a result. Houghton says the poor people in the world who stand to be very disadvantaged by things like climate change. He's in error over there. It's not disadvantaged by things like climate change, but climate change policy, which has not been informed by the science. Gore, it believes to have an overrepresentation of factual presentations. A judge who judged against showing the film in the UK without sufficient warnings disagreed. Marlo Lewis has had loads of critiques of the entire Gore film and book. Is the IPCC honest? Well, the 1995, none of the studies cited above have shown clear evidence that mankind contributes to cause of increase in greenhouse gases. So that's this is now number 5, and it's still the same idea. There's no evidence that we contribute. This is 1995. This is what actually came out. The body of evidence now points to a discernible human influence of global climate. Fred Singer documents the details. Paul Ryder was a member of the IPCC, and he resigned, and the IPCC did not tell the truth. He spoke at this conference. There's a moral issue. This is Christopher Monkton. Al Gore says, I believe this is a moral issue. So it is. To announce disasters or scary scenarios, to overrepresent factual presentations in place of adherence to scientific truth, that is a moral issue. There are censorship issues. Hansen wants to restrict free speech, in effect. That's why I titled this From the Inquisition, Galileo to Lysenkoism in the Soviet Union through the Third Reich to Hansen. The heads of major fossil fuel companies who spread disinformation about global warming should be tried for high crimes against humanity and nature. This is not just people who are in fossil fuel companies. This applies to scientists as well, you may well imagine. People who disagree with Mr. Hansen and his fellows. And people do in the NIPCC, we do not currently have any convincing evidence or observations of significant climate change from other than natural causes. Let me just skip ahead. These are a number of the issues. Temperatures aren't falling, models are lacking, polar bears are thriving, methodological errors are rampant, possible economic consequences are severe of a cap and trade, the moral issues are urgent, and the possible consequences to science are disastrous. Emotion versus you're free to think, not to think about any issue, but you're not free to escape the consequences resulting from not thinking. I'll be through in just 30 seconds. In the world's, this is from Longfellow. They want, the Aguas want you to believe and to act on what they say. This is from Longfellow, A Psalm of Life. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like thumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Science and public policy incident is just one of many that are arguing against the alarmism. This is a book by Essex and McKittrick. The picture didn't come out, but this is a recent book by Chris Horner called Red Hot Lies. The Deniers by Lawrence Solomon is a lesson in courage bequeathed by those who came before. Moore Longfellow, lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time, including the life-supporting carbon footprints. Thanks a lot.